All right, we are welcome everyone to our pre-meeting with Ms. Jackie Huffman, 30-year veteran of local government. Woohoo! Very exciting.
It's me.
It is.
Thank you. I appreciate all the good wishes from many of the employees and the board. Thank you. And citizens, actually. I got several citizen emails today. I'm excited about that. Thank you. This afternoon's pre-meeting is dedicated to our discussion of what I'm going to call our CIP, Capital Improvement Program, for people who, I'm trying to take some of my jargon out. It is my hope that this is a conversation. I do not have prepared remarks. We as a board discussed items in our capital improvement program at our board workshop earlier this year in January. And so this is a follow-up, and we'll talk about how some projects have moved a little bit and some funding sources have changed since then. And I'm going to need a huge assist from most everybody in the room, maybe a person or two not in the room right this second. Michael and Stephen, I'm going to need a fair amount of help with some of the projects because my specialty is not memorizing the 68 projects. My specialty is once you put them all on one sheet of paper and decide to fund them, how do they get funded? Bobby, do we have the Excel document we can pull up? Awesome, sweet. What you're going to see when we get this pulled up, and a copy of it should be included in the packet, there are multiple columns. Certainly, we describe the project. We give you a page number, then we give you a project. The next thing we're going to do is tell you if what year a project was funded in. So many projects have been funded in a prior year. So we keep them on the list to illustrate that we're still working on projects, but there's no new funding being asked for them. An example of that is the first project on the list, which is Town Hall. The new Town Hall is scheduled to be completed by the end of this calendar year. We expect to be moved into it. We're not asking for any new funding. That was generally funded with a LOBS, a limited obligation bond that we issued a little over a year ago. We're not asking for any new funding, but certainly that project is consuming a significant portion of staff time, and so we want to keep that on the list to illustrate that that's one of the projects that we're working on. So that prior funded projects list sums $111 million. That's an awful lot of money. I don't remember a time when we had as many as $111 million worth of projects funded that we're working on from prior years. Having said that, Town Hall itself was over a $30 million project, which we expect to complete this calendar year. So that's an example of a project that will roll off. Two more examples of projects that I expect will complete this calendar year, which will cease to be on the list next year when they're no longer an active project. Another example would be the Heritage Green sidewalks. Expensive project. It's gone on for a while. Bobby, we believe that project will finish this summer or certainly by calendar year end. Bobby, Stephen, somebody? Thank you, Kevin. Awesome. Sweet. Somebody agrees. In the calendar year, we think the Heritage Green sidewalks will be complete. Another example, assist Michael, please. The North Mac Greenway, we think will finish certainly, if not this calendar year, in fiscal 26, such that that's another example that will not be on this list next year. So of that $111 million, that's $38 million that would not be on the list next year. So 34% of it won't be on the list next year.
You mean Huntington?
I did mean Huntington Green. Thank you very much. This should open my book. Yeah, awesome. Let me give you a bit of a tour guide before we get much deeper in this spreadsheet. So the first column, funded in prior years. Absent direction otherwise from you tonight, when you vote on the FY26 budget, the only projects you'll be funding is the funding amount in that FY26 column. So we don't have a board-adopted CIP that commits you to funding in future years 27 through 30, but we are telling you these are projects that we expect to be coming up in the next 4 years. So it's a 5-year CIP because we list for you FY26 through FY30. If you see projects that are listed in future, I can't be more blunt than this. Those are projects we think we ought to be thinking about, we ought to be considering, but we have not funded them. So that's something we're thinking about it, but it's $46 million worth of projects that we have not identified a funding source for, and they are likely to ebb and flow over the course of the next 5 years, and maybe they move up, or maybe they stay in that future column for additional years. $111 million and funded in prior years, that's big, but once the near 38 million come off, those are three I could identify very quickly that I likely roll off the list. There are projects that will stay on this list, I'm gonna word it this way, for a long period of time. I can't tell you how many years, but we know Stumptown Road Extension is an example of a project that's gonna go on for multiple years. Of the 30 years that I've spent in local government, 9 of them have been here. I'm fairly certain within months of when I came to work for the town in 2016, we started working on what we were calling at the time a culvert on Gilead Road West that has ballooned into the project that you see on the second row. And if that project doesn't stay on this list for 3 or 4 more years as an actively funded project, if it don't stay on the list 3 or 4 years, I'll be surprised. Please stop me and correct me as I need it, but I'm going to try to concentrate on the projects that you're going to be asked to fund in FY26, absent you telling us something, giving us direction tonight. No, we don't want to fund that project. So the first project I see up there is we will need some additional funding for Gilead Road West in FY26, $841,000. The next project on the list, Stumptown Road Extension. When you see a project that has some funding here, Bobby, will you take us down to the sub at the bottom? Just because they're funded in FY26, you might not be asked to be the funding source for that. So you see at the bottom, Transportation Reserve is a funding source for almost $1 million worth of projects. We are asking you to fund in the budget that you adopt almost $7 million worth of projects from general fund balance. $1,732,000 is grant funds from other sources. So you're going to see we funded it, but we're not asking you to fund it. But you do have to approve the budget that would approve the project. Funded by others at $500,000. You'll see what that project is when we get to it. And the LOBs. We're asking you for funding related to Fire Station number 5 in this budget. We contemplate doing a reimbursement resolution, so we'll start on the design of that project. We will not be in a position to issue the LOBs, the limited obligation bonds, even if we do a design build contract prior to us knowing what general contractor bid amounts are. So is that fire station going to be $10 million or $10.8 million, or is it going to be $14 million? We don't know. We're taking a guess right now that it's $12 million, but we won't be in a position to ask the local government commission to approve debt in the form of the LOBs prior to us having general contractor bids in hand.
Will the fire station, you said LOBs or installment financing?
I'm going to say yes to that. It'll be one or the other. I suspect our financial advisor will recommend LOBs, which is a specific type of an installment financing. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, related to when we know about how much we need because we know the price of the station. In the unlikely event that we are able to secure land for Station 2 prior to late summer, there is a possibility that rather than us asking you to issue LOBs on Fire Station 5, we may come back and say, oop, wait a minute, we probably should do 2 quicker, but we're not going to do that without the land. We have the land for Station 5 in hand. We don't have the land for Station 2, but miracles happen. So that's what our funding sources are. I might have to look down at my sheet rather than looking with you all, because the bifocals are betraying me. We talked about the $1,732,000. That seems to be grant funding. Some of it grant funding, I'm sure some of it from us for Stumptown Road Extension. The $12 million is related to Fire Station number 5. So We will do a reimbursement resolution. We'll start on the design for the station, and I do not expect to ask you to approve debt for that prior to January, just because it takes a while to design the station. When we know how much the general contractor bids are, that's when we need to issue debt. Our first debt service payment after we issue debt won't be for, generally speaking, about 6 months. I don't think we will have the design done before December, which means we wouldn't have the debt issued before January. You don't issue the debt before January, you won't need to make a debt service payment for 6 months later, which would be July. So we're not asking you to fund in the FY26 budget a debt service payment on that fire station because we don't know how much debt we'll be issuing. At the point where you agree to issue debt on that station, you're going to need to provide for the debt on that station, the debt service payments for every year, 10, 20, whatever term we decide on once you issue that debt. So you don't have to budget for it now, but please don't be naive. If you approve that debt in FY26, it's coming in 27. And the financial forecast that we'll look at in a few minutes assumes that that debt would be issued in 26, no debt service payments in 26, but we'll show you a forecast that would suggest you're going to need to make debt service payments in 27. The next item is the park at Fire Station Number 4. Earlier this spring, late in the winter, we approved the master plan for that park. The master plan for that park suggested we would put some amenities there that would be more expensive than what we contemplated at this point in the budget process last year. And so the funding sources for that park are currently the bonds that we already issued this past fall, the FY24 Parks and Recreation bonds. That didn't fund all of it. The rest of this is proposed to come from fund balance. So I can tell you off the top of my head, Patty, that $4.6 million is proposed to come directly out of fund balance. So if you're uncomfortable about the size of that park or building that expensive a park at this pace, now would be an awesome time to throw the flag and say, wait, let's do it in phases, let's slow it down. There's a possibility of some grant funding. So it's a bit of a moving target at this point, but at this point, we estimate our cost to get that park here would require a contribution from fund balance of $4.6 million. Yes, ma'am.
You saw my movement, didn't you? And I don't know, maybe it's a Michael question, but I'm curious, because you mentioned some components of the park or what increased the price. I'd be curious to hear more.
The big expensive item is the splash pad. It's the biggest portion of that, and we're also looking at covering the pickleball court, so that's another additional cost as well.
Okay, great. I had a feeling it might be the splash pad. And do you think there are possible grants that we could apply for as well?
Yeah, so you all approved our application to the Parks and Rec Trust Fund, so we are submitting our grant, which is due May 1st. Typically, we find out in late August if we receive that grant, which is for $500,000.
Okay.
Stay for a second, Michael. Full disclosure and wet blanket, there could be some additional cost associated with the driveway there.
So we do have some road improvements we have to also take care of as part of the road, the park project as well. Yeah, I forgot about that.
MJ, what is the cost to cover the pickleball court?
I think they're estimating around $250,000 to $300,000. That's kind of a ballpark of what they're anticipating that being.
Thanks.
And what we also, I just want to mention this too, anytime we do a park project, we usually have alternates. So at least we can get the park moving forward in case bids come in high. So we're probably going to maybe do the splash pads an alternate and maybe the cover of the pickleball as alternate. Then we can choose, if it's over budget, what do we take out, what do we keep in? So that's how we typically handle the project.
Thanks. Appreciate you.
What's the splash pad cost?
That's about 1.1 million, 1.2 million.
We're up here laughing, y'all. I'm sorry, it's Nick and I.
Happy to continue discussions about the park, but again, once he bids it, you'll get some final numbers, and it could be that number or a different number, but that's our current estimate. Absent more questions about the park, I'll move on now to sidewalks. If memory serves, in the last 2-3 fiscal years, we've budgeted $500,000 for new sidewalks. An example of new sidewalks being what's going on across the street right now. Next year, there are additional sidewalk projects, one in particular that we think would take a span of time of 2 years. So please notice in FY '26 and '27, we're increasing that $500,000 sidewalk estimate up to $750,000. This is not intended to be for repairs of existing sidewalk or the ADA transition plan that would correct existing sidewalks. This is just new sidewalks. Stephen, I told you this morning that I would try to remember the name of the project that was causing a large portion of this increase, and I'm giving myself grace, I don't remember it. Bradford Glen. Sweet, oh, Bradford Glen. But in the unlikely event that something happens, we run into a right-of-way problem, or that something slows that sidewalk down, we would use this sidewalk money for other sidewalks. Hearing no question about that sidewalk, I'll move down to Road 30, which is Huntersville Concord Road at Warfield. And so that is another example of a multi-year project. We've already budgeted some money for it. What we think we'd need for FY '26 is the $250,000. And you can see the majority of the construction money related to that project is in FY '27. Hearing no questions about that project, I'll move on to $600,000, which is for Bud Henderson and Beatty's Ford Road. That is a road improvement that we've already started on. $200,000 has already been funded in prior years, and $600,000 would complete that project. Below that, a project that it feels like has moved around from one year to another. We have $1,250,000 in FY '26 related to the David Kenny Farm connection. That is, you can see that's some money that would, see, I'm just gonna start looking at.
You're gonna get folks to show up at the next meeting on that one.
Okay, apologies. So Townley Road, the Townley Connector, is a project that will have changed in timing since the last time we discussed this in January. And remember, I said when I had Bobby give us a tour of the bottom of the spreadsheet, said $500,000 from others. We anticipate that the cost that we would dedicate toward this project in FY '26 would be $750,000, and the developer contribution would be $500,000, such that the total cost that we would initiate that project for in FY '26 would be $1,250,000. That will not finish that project. Notice the number of years that we anticipate would likely take to complete that project. I'm a little in over my head. Stephen, Anthony, anybody want to finish that one off?
Yeah, and if this project continues to move forward, there are other developer contributions to this project as you get in out years as part of that approval process.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was noticing, the 9 million, and they've committed 2 million towards it.
That's correct.
So should we be adjusting for that in the spreadsheet, or how do
Well,
we handle that?
Ultimately, until we get that money in hand, we show a 9 million as a total cost.
You'll have,
But there will be contributions from them that will come in different phases throughout this project.
you'll have to budget for the total cost, and then you'll budget an offsetting revenue for the portion that somebody else pays you back for. That completes the list of what I'm going to refer to as major capital funded in FY '26. When you get your budget book from us next week on May 6th, when Anthony makes the manager's recommended budget presentation, there's going to be a fair amount of additional capital that's included in that. But it's not construction-related capital. It's going to be things like police cars and maybe a golf cart in the Parks and Rec Department. It's going to be smaller dollar value capital. This completes the list of larger capital items that I expect will fund in FY '26. So may I do a little commentary on the unlabeled row that's at the bottom is the sum. I've spoken ad nauseum already tonight over the $111 million funded in prior years. $22 million is not necessarily an atypical number, as you can see, checking the other years across the bottom of the spreadsheet. 12 million of that, again, remember, is in one project in the fire station. If you have questions about how typical it is that we would fund 22 million or other amounts, now would be a good time to ask them. I will tell you FY '28, 68 million, that's an atypical figure, and this is why. When you issue bonds, we currently suspect that we will have, if you complete projects at this pace, which I doubt you will, be unprecedented, but I think as early as you would need to use the remaining bonds that you have authorized by the voters would be FY '28. And so this budget, this document tries to do probably too many things, but at the point where you issue the bonds, we've kind of clustered the projects that are funded with when you get that funding. So you probably, it would be unprecedented if you completed $68 million worth of projects in 1 year, you won't. But if you issue the bonds in that year, that's likely the year that you will fund them and include them in your budget. What questions can I answer before we move on?
I just have one. Down towards the bottom, there are a number of projects that don't seem to have any funding. They're just out there in the future. I know they started just this week, Gibson Park Phase 2, and I know we asked, I think, during the retreat to add Gibson Park Phase 3, but I don't see any funding or any just showing out there as future.
That's row 60, if memory's right. Yeah. And so, no,
Yeah, it was not, I don't think it was in the actual project list before. We added it, but we put it into a future year right now until we get Phase 2 done. So we did not move it up because Phase 2 was taking so long, but it's sitting there. If the board says we want to move it up, we can move it up. We just got to figure out the funding. And most likely that would be fund balance. Again, that's because Jackie's going to talk further, and as we get further through this budget process, tax rates staying the same. We're going to dip it heavily in the fund balance, but as Jackie probably mentioned earlier in this whole process, these projects take a long time.
when you fund it and when you have a ribbon cutting that it's complete is frequently more distant than you would expect. I notice a couple of things on here I think probably should be mentioned. I don't recall in prior years, Patty, we had fire trucks on this list, and that's because generally speaking, we would give money to the fire department. The fire department, as a nonprofit, would go out and finance those vehicles, so they did not show up on our capital list. We don't have a nonprofit Inc. anymore, and so that planned capital that Chief Tatoli would have told you he needs an investment in fire stations appears on this list. The very bottom row, police space needs. We are in the middle of a space needs assessment for the police department, and what is the recommended solution for their space needs is unidentified as to this point, and so we'll have a dollar figure on there. If it's rent some space locally, that wouldn't show up in our capital. If it's sell your existing and build another one, we just haven't identified the right solution yet. Are there, so Patty, the total represented at the far right column, $330 million, that includes the prior funded plus all of the FY26 through future. That is a gigantic number. Do I believe we will fund that amount in the next, call it 7 years, the prior years plus these 5 plus future? I doubt it. That's a big number. I used to give the speech that I referred to as this is a buffet. Pick items off the buffet that you want to fund, or pick some off the buffet that you can't eat everything at the buffet, right? So if there are projects on this list, specifically in FY26, you're like, yeah, let's don't fund that project this year. Now would be an awesome time to admit that. If you're curious, were we drunk, what was the logic behind putting the projects in the order that they're in, we attempted to take the far left column, if it's funded in the whatever that far right column is, rank them in that dollar figure order. Once you commit to the first column, then they're going to be a little bit out of sync in the future columns. I'm happy to elaborate more on this spreadsheet or go to what I will call the 5-year forecast. If you're going to fund these projects, how would you fund them? Yes, ma'am.
So with our greenways, I know that a lot of our greenways are funded by county dollars, but one thing when I was looking at this list, and I didn't pick up on it at planning retreat, it doesn't seem that we have any of our budget in FY26 allocated to any greenway construction. Am I seeing that correctly?
We've already budgeted for them. So we've already, if you look in the first column,
Yeah, I see that.
so those are already funded. And so basically, we funded it. We're waiting on the county to start those projects.
Do we have, I was just thinking, because I know in pretty much every survey that the town does, that parks and greenways and things are mentioned, that's an amenity that is always at the top of the list. And so I don't know if there's a way that if we have any like smaller size projects or something where I feel like it's a missed opportunity to not budget anything towards greenways in any fiscal year.
So MJ may have something to say there, but what I would say is, what we've done is already funded those projects. These are 25 million, huge projects that we were able to fund at 10, 11, 12% of those projects. So just like this whole list of 111 million, even though it's not showing it, these are like road projects, they take forever. So we've committed to 1.8, 1.5 million. The Greenway in the business park, so they're just front-loaded. I would love to spread them out, but you don't want that. You want them to be done. We want to fund those now, that percentage, and it's just going to take, like these roads, it's going to take 4 and 5 years for each one of those projects, but there's at least 3 or 4 funded.
So Anthony, rows 16, 17, and 27 represent projects that already have funding. We're working on getting the bill in so we could get that part of it completed. And then I would say in 27, we fund row 27 and row, what was one close to it? 27
And then the actual bridge itself, 73.
Right.
Greenway Bridge is a funded project.
So there's really 5 greenway projects at the tunnel, the bridge, Lower McDowell,
21.
21, South Prong, the Park Greenway, and North Met Greenway. It's under construction. So most of our park projects are greenway projects.
So where we
I guess I just
focus,
always want more, because that's the feedback we always hear.
But I mean, if you look at that, I mean, we got 5 projects related to greenways.
so where we focus our efforts, if you notice, if we did that, the bond that the voters approved was small, in Parks and Rec. We've been very creative in coming up with and partnering with the county to stretch greenway dollars like no other. And so where we focus our efforts now on some of these larger parks, I mean, that's why you see a Station 4 park and a Station 5, I'll call them Station 4 and Station 5 parks, that we're focusing on now with all the various components, because our greenway system is on, I mean, it can't get any better than the way we're working it now. I mean, it's like a road. Every year there's going to be construction, which is unheard of.
And the CRTPO grants have been huge for us. They've paid for more than half of the bridge and the tunnel and so forth.
Can you remind me, if you know off the top of your head, because I know in the master plan, we kind of have a goal, I think for 2030, of miles of greenway. How close are we to meeting that goal?
I have to go back and look. I can't think off the top of my head.
That's okay, for the budget retreat.
And some of those too, we also talk about trails within parks. So like, Fire Station number 5, I call Rama Church Park, has 2 miles of trail. So I mean, that's also beneficial, but also looking to connect that park to the neighborhoods nearby as well. So as those smaller pieces come to being an opportunity, then I mean, also we'll bring that to you. But I think right now, I mean, with all the greenway projects we have, we're investing a lot in the greenways.
Okay.
I would encourage you to look over this document. The projects funded in even 28, 29, and 30, that's going to move a lot between now and those fiscal years. So take a look at it. If you're motivated, you need it moved up, let us know. This is a pretty aggressive intent to provide capital that would be unprecedented based on future years. So if there's nothing else about this CIP document, let's discuss how this capital relates to how our budget might flow in the next 5 years. So we do a 5-year financial forecast. The 5-year financial forecast has multiple years in it. Notice that we show you column A, which is a description of what these revenue and expense categories are, and we skip from column A to column I. 100% of the truth is we've got prior year's data that's in that previous column. Or an accountant like me, it's kind of interesting to see how our revenues and how our expenses and our capital funded and our debt service payments are changing over the years, but at some point the table gets too big. So we're showing you 2 years of historical data. So the first row shows you how much our beginning of the year fund balance was, and then we describe for you in minimal detail what our revenue sources are. And then underneath that, we tell you what our personnel operating and capital expenditures are and debt service. That gives us a net change to fund balance in row 35. And then row 37 is just what did you start with, what's the net change, so what's the ending number. And the ending number from one year becomes the beginning number in the next year. FY24 ties to our FY24 audited financial statements you received in December. So that $83 million is what we had in fund balance. That is not the total amount of money that you can make a budget decision to go out and spend tomorrow. Much of that has to be held for a particular purpose, like it's PAL bill restricted or it's tourism restricted. We have reserve by state statute. Reserve by state statute, in my view, is a working capital number. You have to have enough money at June 30 each year to pay your expenses for the water bills and the power bills that have not come in yet. And so this is your total fund balance. This is not what we think you have available to spend. Don't fall in that trap. But I would expect, absent any changes that I do not expect we'll make this week, that when you get your budget, proposed budget next week, that your general fund tax revenues will be in row 23, that $38 million, at what you have asked us to adopt, recommend at the current tax rate, 22.75. Okay, so we predict for you, we show you what we think our revenue sources will be in sales tax, and we still call it utility franchise tax. It's been utility sales tax for years, but that's our terminology. What the PAL bill sources are, and a few revenues, and you can see we come up with a sum of total general fund revenues of $73 million. You will hear us talk about the number of positions we recommend you add, the number of COLA merit and benefit changes we ask you to make next year. We'll do some operating things. Remember, there are things that you could argue are baked in the cake. We have a 7-year agreement with our solid waste provider that provides them a CPI adjustment. And the number of households will increase. So there are a number of things that would make the operating number go up from one year to the next. The transit tax is an item that is a revenue and expense that simply rolls through our books. Those numbers should always match. Jackie, Patty did something wrong if they don't match, because we get a revenue, 3-5 days later, we transfer that money out. It doesn't sit here, but the preferred accounting treatment is to show that as a pass-through item, a revenue and expense. Existing debt service, row 30, is every obligation you have on the books today. That does not propose you would issue any new debt. The row below it, if you issue new debt, that's where we're suggesting you're going to have to provide for future debt service. So I talked earlier about that Fire Station 5. If you issue LOBs or an installment financing for it, I don't think you're going to issue it in time to need to make a debt service payment in 26, but you would in 27. So that's one of the reasons why you would see no debt service in 27. So I would expect, absent any changes that we hear about tonight, that the budget you'll receive, first meeting in May 6th, will have total general fund revenues of $73 million, and largely because of capital, but for several other reasons, expenditures of a total of $89 million and a use of fund balance of $15 million. Now, before we issued the bonds, we talked about how much we thought the tax rate should go up to make those debt service payments. And our financial advisor predicted that once we make our debt service payments on debt for Town Hall and the new bonds, that we would be using some of fund balance for a term of 2 to 3 years before other debt rolled off of our books. And so our debt service will dip into fund balance for a few years, and then it would become more level. And so that's what you see taking place here. So if all of the projects happened at the pace you fund them in '26, there's no historical precedence for that, then ending fund balance in '26 would be $57 million. I'm not telling you that I think fund balance in 2 years is going to go from 80 million to 57 million, largely because even when you fund those projects, we can't get them done that fast. So that becomes part of that prior year's funded capital number that's still funded but not yet done. Okay, so if you, because property taxes make up our largest revenue source, this is not Jackie Patty recommending you spend fund balance down from 80 million at the end of '24 to $2 million at the end of '30. I'm not suggesting you do that. That is too dramatic, and I suspect the Local Government Commission would have you on the unit assist list if you did that. This is not a recommendation. This is purposefully to illustrate that if you continue to add capital at that pace, you continue to add debt service at that pace, you continue to add operating and personnel expenses at this pace, you're going to have to do more to the tax rate than what we're showing you below. So you notice in row 46 it says property taxes. So we're showing you the history of how much property tax we have collected. The next row, there is some what I'm going to refer to as natural growth in the system. So you see buildings going up all over town, commercial, residential, multifamily. That is what I would term natural growth in the system. The next row, row 49, revaluation percentage. Mecklenburg County suggests to us that the next revaluation will be in FY28. I have no inside baseball information. I have no idea whether property values will have risen 15% or 50% or 2% or have actually fallen. But I'm making a suggestion here that I think based on past experience that there will be some natural growth in the system and there's likely to be some increase in the revaluation. And what you see in row 51, many people find very interesting, is the tax rate. So I would like for you to think of it this way. As you've told us, FY26 is suggesting a tax rate of the current tax rate, 22.75. If you issue multiple pieces of debt, like I think by FY27, there's not one fire station, but likely 2 fire stations. I probably should have mentioned while we were on the previous sheet, we also contemplate you're likely, regardless of what happens with other properties in town, in downtown, you're likely going to want to contemplate an additional deck to accommodate all of the vehicles in the downtown area. So there is the contemplation that you would issue debt for another parking deck. And so again, as you issue debt, you're going to need to make debt service payments. As you continue to add capital at the pace that that 5-year construction capital improvement program suggested, you're going to need to do something with the tax rate. And it might not just be 24 cents, again, because we're not, as staff, we're not going to recommend you take fund balance down to $2 million by FY30. So we like to say, we like to give this spreadsheet out to you in Excel format. I don't want you to have it in PDF. I hope you're no more comfortable with a fund balance of $2 million than I am. So play with this document and put in a different tax rate. You vote on what the tax rate's going to be every year. Choose to take some projects out to keep the fund balance at a level you're more comfortable with, or choose to take the tax rate to whatever number you choose. Bobby, will you go into FY27 and where it says we're at 24 cents in row 51, will you change that to 25? And you can see by changing the tax rate by 1 penny, fund balance by FY30 rather than $2 million and change became $10 million. Bobby, will you go back to, let's say, will you go back to, in FY28, if the values went up by 15%, why don't we make that tax rate instead of 25 cents, let's make it 24. Let's take it back to 24. There is a future year impact to changing a tax rate. What we have built in into row 51, the tax rate, is to just assume it's going to be the next year in whatever it was the prior year. There's no rule you have to do that. Change every single year individually. Mayor, you want to throw out a different tax rate and ask him to change one? Does anybody want to change it to a different number? Bobby will change it to whatever number we ask him to. We could change FY '26 and show you, if we adopted a 24-cent tax rate, how much less that would have an impact on fund balance rather than taking 15 million out. We'll change it. We send this out in Excel so you can what if and hypothesis just as long as I can and see what the impact is of any project change, funding level change, or any tax rate change. I'm going to take a breath and see if anybody wants to change any of these numbers or see if there's any comments we can respond to.
One thing I'd say too is, as Jackie mentioned, the FY '26 budget, it shows everything. Gosh, we're dipping in the fund balance, 15.6 million, change the fund balance. I can tell you FY '25 EYE is not going to be 8 million and dipping in the fund balance. It's just not. We are underspending. We're not getting projects done fast enough. So I wouldn't get too worked up about these numbers that you see before you. If everything worked and we were able to get projects done on time and everything was great, you can't. You just can't get there. So, we're not going to spend at this rate. And ultimately, as Jackie said, I would not worry about 28 and 29 and 30. I don't know if any of us will be here. No board, no staff is going to allow you to get down that low. As Jackie said, ultimately, it just shows you if we were to fund all these projects, then this is what it would look like. So it doesn't take into account, are we going to get more CRTPO grants in future years? Sure we are. Are we going to get part of grants in future years? Sure we are. We always do. So none of that's taken into account. It's just a tool here for you to work on and look at future years that some projects may move forward. We may move a future project that's not even funded all the way up into 26 or 27. We may move a project, in 27 all the way back to FY '30. It just depends on grants and different things that ebb and flow and come in. So I wouldn't get too worked up on outer years. We're not going to let that happen. You're not going to let that happen. Focus more on FY '26, and at the end of the day, FY '26, we're not going to dip in the fund balance that much. It won't happen. I bet my house and car and all of your house and cars that go with it, FY '25 EYE won't end up anywhere near that, and FY '26 won't end up anywhere near that. Just can't spend it fast enough.
We have deputized Anthony into accounting jargon. For those of you who need to know what EYE stands for us, that's estimated year end. We know that we're not, it's April 22nd. We know we're not going to get all of the budget spent by June 30. We can't get that spent. I'm going to ask you not to save this document. Here's the other thing I would say. If you save this document and say, Jackie, you told me that you were going to use almost $8 million and fund balance would drop from $80 million in FY '24 to $72 million at the end of '25, when the auditors come to make their presentation in December and show you what our fund balance is, I bet Anthony's house and car, it won't be this 72, but I'm not willing at this stage to tell you what it is. Because I don't, not because I'm mean or bad, just because I don't know. It's a guessing game. What questions can we answer for you about this 5-year forecast?
What's the calendar moving forward, Jackie?
At the next board meeting, May 6th, we will make the manager's recommended budget public. We expect, we've not added this to our calendar, but we expect on the next night, May 7th, to have a budget workshop and discuss what you received the prior night. May 20th, the second meeting in May, if I've got the dates messed up, will be a public hearing on the budget. And generally speaking, we adopt budget on the first meeting in June. I think it's June 3rd, but again, it's first meeting in June. We can have as many budget workshops as it takes to get you comfortable with voting on the budget at that first meeting in June.
So after this, I would say on May 7th, obviously look at this. May 6th, you'll get more details on what's, how many personnel, where are we funding personnel, what are some of the operational things, what are other capital, maybe smaller capital items, et cetera. Give us your feedback. May 7th, we have a workshop. And after that, if you need more workshops between now and, obviously, your calendars get tight, between now and the 20th, we'll have a public hearing, hear some feedback. If you want another workshop after that, we just, we'll work that in. And if there are other forms of public engagements that you're looking for, just need to let us know so we can kind of find a venue, find out, where you want to have that, what you're expecting, what do you like to see out of that. Probably need to get Ethan engaged, on that if those are, we heard some comment on that, I think, at one of our 3-on-3s earlier. So if that's something, Mayor and Board, y'all want to do, just let us know so we can start looking at calendars and figure that out.
I can say we definitely want to do some of those community-focused events again this year. I think they went well last year and were well-received, and so Ethan and I will start working on that.
We'll count on Ethan then.
That's all I have.
All right, we will reconvene at 6 o'clock. I see the basketball team is outside, so everybody get excited.